Hi, I'm Bob. Welcome back to the tutorial on solving the exercises for the textbook Microeconomics Theory and Applications with Calculus, the 5th edition. We will address the remaining exercises related to asymmetric information in Chapter 18. These exercises cover topics such as price discrimination due to false beliefs about quality, market power from price ignorance, and problems arising from ignorance when hiring. Let's get started. Here's exercise 3.1. Explain how a monopoly firm can price discriminate by advertising sales in newspapers or magazines that only some of its customers see. Is it a noisy monopoly? The monopoly can engage in price discrimination. Only the customers who see the advertisement know these sales, and other customers may not know the price variation. The monopoly can take advantage of uninformed customers by charging them a high price. A noisy monopoly confuses consumers by creating noise about its products. It sells identical products with different brand names, making customers think they are of different quality. In general terms, asymmetric or distorted information can be interpreted as a form of noise. The firm is a noisy monopoly by creating price ignorance about its products for some customers. Let's solve exercise 3.2. Some food manufacturers sell a national brand product for more than an identical private label product. Is such a firm a noisy monopoly? It's a noisy monopoly. A noisy monopoly confuses customers by creating noise about its products. It sells identical products with different brand names, making consumers think they are of different quality. Some customers falsely believe that the products under a national brand are of higher quality than those under private label brands. They don't know they are identical products. The firm takes advantage of these customers by charging them a high price. Let's answer exercise 3.3. Some firms sell the same product under two brand names at different prices. Given an asymmetric information explanation as to why the firm might use pairs of brand names and why one product might sell for more than another. The firm creates noise about its products by selling the same product under various brand names. Some customers falsely believe that the identical products under a certain brand name have higher quality than under another brand name. They don't know they have the same quality. The asymmetric information about the quality of the products leads to price discrimination. The firm can take advantage of the less informed customers by charging them a higher price for the allegedly superior product. Let's jump to exercise 4.1. In solved problem 18.3, if the vast majority of all customers knows the true prices at all stores and only a few shoppers have to incur a search cost to learn the prices. Is the equilibrium a single price at the monopoly level PM? If most customers are informed of the true prices at all stores, they will go to the store with the lowest price. Only a few shoppers will purchase in the store at a higher price because of the search cost. The store charging a higher price will have too few customers to make a profit. As a result, all stores will lower their prices until they reach the competitive level. The competitive price will be an equilibrium. The monopoly price will not be an equilibrium. Let's address exercise 4.2. The Federal Trade Commission objected to the California Dental Association's prohibitions against its members engaging in advertising about prices, calling them restraints on trade. What effect should such restraints have on equilibrium prices? The restraints that dentists cannot advertise about their prices lead to a higher price than without the restraints. If dentists can advertise about prices without the restraints, consumers do not need to incur a high such cost to find price information. They will go to the dentists at a low price. As a result, all dentists will lower their prices until the competitive level. Consumers benefit from the advertisement. With the restraints on advertising, consumers will end up paying a higher price because of the asymmetric information about the prices. Let's go to exercise 5.1. In the education signaling model, suppose that firms can pay C* to have a worker's ability determined by a test. Does it pay for a firm to make this expenditure? Tests serve as a screening method to distinguish high-ability workers from low-ability workers. If the expected marginal benefit from hiring a high-ability worker is greater than the test cost C*, it pays for a firm to make this expenditure. Let's solve exercise 5.2. Some universities do not give letter grades. One rationale is that eliminating the letter grade system reduces pressure on students, thus enabling them to learn more. Does this policy help or hurt students? It may reduce pressure on students. However, the grade serves as a signal of the student's ability. Without grades, high-ability graduates lose a method of signaling their ability in the labor market. Employers have to offer an average wage for all graduates. This harms high-ability students. As a result, no one goes to university in the model where education has the only function of signaling. Let's answer exercise 5.3. Some firms are willing to hire only high school graduates. Based on past experience or statistical evidence. These companies believe that, on average, high school graduates perform better than non-graduates. How does this hiring behavior compare to statistical discrimination by employers on the basis of race or gender? Discuss the equity and efficiency implications of this practice. Firms screen prospective workers by their educational attainment. Screening based on educational attainment differs from statistical discrimination because individuals can choose whether to go to school but cannot choose their age, gender, race, or ethnicity. The textbook gives the definition of statistical discrimination. If employers think that people of a certain age, gender, race, religion, or ethnicity have higher ability than others on average, they may engage in statistical discrimination and hire only people with that characteristic. It harms the high ability individuals in a statistically low ability group. On the other hand, education can signal that an individual is of high ability. Assuming that educational attainment is significantly correlated to skills and abilities, using it as a screening method to distinguish between high ability and low ability people is fair. Speaking of efficiency, if the screening results in a better matching of workers and jobs, or education provides useful training, social welfare will increase. If education only has the signaling function, efficiency decreases going to school because it is unproductive. Let's solve exercise 5.4. Suppose that you are given WH, WL, and theta in the education signaling model. For what value of C are both a pooling equilibrium and a separating equilibrium possible? For what value of C are both types of equilibria possible, and do high ability workers have higher net earnings in a separating equilibrium than in a pooling equilibrium? We solve the problem in two steps. In the first step, we find the conditions for both equilibria are possible. We use the graph in the textbook. It shows the conditions for pooling equilibrium, separating equilibrium, and both. Both equilibria are possible in the triangle area in the middle. In that area, two inequalities hold. First, C is less than WH minus WL. Second, theta is greater than 1 minus C divided by WH minus WL. We can rearrange it to find the expression for C. Therefore, when C is inside that range, both pooling and separating equilibrium are possible. In the second step, we determine which type of earnings is greater inside that area. A high ability worker's net earnings equals her wage WH minus the cost of education C in the separating equilibrium. She earns W bar in the pooling equilibrium. W bar is the weighted average of wages for the two types of workers, where the weight theta is the share of high ability workers. We subtract the separating earnings from the pooling earnings to find which is greater. Because the inequality too must hold inside this area, we have the result that the pooling earnings are higher than the separating earnings for high ability workers in this area. Let's address exercise 5.5. Education is a continuous variable, where EH is the years of schooling of a high ability worker and EL is the years of schooling of a low ability worker. The cost per period of education for these types of workers is CH and CL, respectively, where CL is greater than CH. The wages they receive, if employers can tell them apart, are WH and WL. Under what conditions is a separating equilibrium possible? How much education will each type of worker get? In a separating equilibrium, a high ability person pays CH times EH to receive EH years of schooling and is employed at a wage of WH. If the individual chooses not to go to school, he will be viewed as having low ability and get a low wage of WL. If he chooses to receive EH years of schooling, his net earnings are WH minus CH times EH. It pays for a high ability person to get EH years of schooling if his net earnings are greater than or equal to the low wage, or the wage difference is greater than or equal to the cost of getting EH years of schooling. A high ability person will choose EH years of schooling as a signal. If a low ability person pretends he is of high ability, he needs to get EH years of schooling. However, the wage difference is not big enough to cover the cost of education because the per period educational cost is higher for low ability people than for high ability people. As a result, high ability people chooses EH years of schooling and low ability people decide not to go to school. Let's solve exercise 5.6. In exercise 5.5, under what conditions is a pooling equilibrium possible? In a pooling equilibrium, both types of workers receive the weighted average wage, W bar. A high ability person will not get EH years of schooling if the wage difference is less than the cost of education. We rearrange terms to find that if the share of high ability people, theta, is large enough, a high ability person will not go to school because the average wage approaches WH, and therefore the benefit of going to school is smaller than the cost. Let's answer exercise 5.7. In exercise 5.5 and 5.6, describe the equilibrium if CL is less than or equal to CH. If education costs less for low ability people than for high ability people, low ability people will choose EL years of schooling. High ability people will not get EL years of schooling because the benefit is less than the cost. Thus, low ability people choose EL years of schooling as a signal and get a high wage. High ability people choose not to go to school and get a low wage. However, employers observe productivity and will not see education as a signal of ability eventually. We reach this result because the assumption of this exercise does not make any sense. It assumes that it is more difficult for high ability people to complete schooling than low ability people. Let's solve exercise 5.8. When is statistical discrimination privately inefficient? When is it socially inefficient? Does it always harm members of the discriminated against group? Explain. Suppose employers think that people of a certain age, gender, race, religion, or ethnicity have higher ability than others on average. In that case, they may engage in statistical discrimination and hire only people with that characteristic. It prevents high ability people in the average low ability group from getting jobs that fit their abilities. It leads to private inefficiency and social inefficiency. Without statistical discrimination, both the private output from those high ability people and the social production should be higher. It always harms some members of the discriminated against group. For example, insurance companies offer lower opto insurance rates to young women than to young men because young men are more likely on average to have an accident. The discriminated against group is young men. It harms those young men who drive carefully. Generally speaking, statistical discrimination always harms the high ability people in the discriminated against group. Let's jump to exercise 6.1. In the challenge solution, what is the minimum fine the government could levy on firms that do not invest in safety that will lead to a Nash equilibrium in which both firms invest? The government can levy a fine on the firm that does not invest in safety to change the game's payoffs. Here's the original payoff matrix. Suppose Firm 2 chooses not to invest in safety. Firm 1 gets 200 if it does not invest and 100 if it does. It is better not to invest. But if it has to pay a fine of $101, the payoff of not investing in safety becomes 99. In that case, Firm 1 will be better off investing in safety because it gives a payoff of 100. We underline 100. Suppose Firm 2 chooses not to invest. Firm 1's best response is still to invest because it provides 225 rather than 149. We underline its payoff 225. Thus, Firm 1 has a dominant strategy: invest in safety regardless of Firm 2's choice. By symmetry, Firm 2 also has a dominant strategy: invest in safety regardless of Firm 1's choice. We circle the cell with two payoffs underlined. That is the Nash equilibrium. Both firms invest in safety. Each firm gets 225. It's both privately and socially optimal. This is the case with only one pure Nash equilibrium. If more Nash equilibria are allowed, the government can impose a lower fine of $26. As the table shows, $26 have been removed from the payoffs of not investing in safety. If Firm 2 does not invest, Firm 1 gets 174 if it does not invest and 100 if it does. We underline 174. If Firm 2 invests, Someone gets 224 if it does not invest and 225 if it does. We underline 225. Similarly, we underline firm 2's best responses. The game has two pure Nash equilibria. Both firms invest, and both do not invest. For both firms to invest is a Nash equilibrium because no player wants to deviate from it. Given that both players invest, each player gets one less if it switches to not investing. Let's answer exercise 6.2. Can you change the payoffs in the table in the challenge solution so that the firms choose to invest in safety? Explain. We have already answered this question in the previous exercise. The government can change the payoffs by imposing a fine on firms that do not invest in safety. There were other ways to change the payoffs. As mentioned in the textbook, if a third party informs potential workers about how safe each firm is, the firm-specific safety information can change the payoffs the same way as a fine. The firm that does not invest in safety will have a lower payoff because it has to offer a higher wage to workers who know they will work in a less safe environment. Thank you very much for watching this video and solving all the exercises with me. See you soon. Take care. Thank you for watching this video and subscribing to my YouTube channel. See you next time.